I mean, I signed a major record deal when I was 19 years old, and it was completely kind of bizarre and bad and in the end. And I thought, well, I never want this to happen to me again. So I took whatever money was sort of left of that, sort of invested in myself. And I just thought, like, I started doing this DIY sort of from my bedroom. I want to kind of continue doing this DIY. And so I think that was I care about music. I care to continue to put out music. How can I do it in a fruitful way and in a way that's like true to myself? And so there came Chastity.
Welcome to the Release Day Series podcast. I'm your host, Alex Heward. This is the first episode of 2022. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in over its very first year in 2021, and I'm excited to get going into 2022 with more interviews. As you can tell, we really took the New Year, New Me saying to heart this January. We've done a big rebrand, new logo, new colors. Even had a new theme song produced by the main man, Graham Beery himself. We've updated the website and our social media design. I really hope you like what we've done to give the show a fresh look and feel. Well, as I said, I'm excited to get back with new interviews this year, introducing you to new music and new artists, and hopefully providing the artist community with new ideas for your next release. You can find all of our episodes on our website, releasedayseries.com, including our limited video series and, of course, our Spotify playlist that's updated with the release of every new episode. And if you are an artist releasing new music or have an interesting release strategy you want us to hear about, please email us your EPK to contactreleaseday@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, all over the place. So shoot us a message on there as well. And on to the first episode of 2022. Community is undoubtedly the essence of what makes music so important, for me at least. And when you discover a song where you feel as though the artist is singing to you, you know that feeling, where the instrumental is just the perfect soundtrack to your life at that very moment, you get this feeling like someone understands you, that you're not alone. And with so many artists focused on being present and relevant on social media, not to their fault, it's something that, we see every day. Artists see every day. We got to be present. We got to be on social media. We got to be in people's faces. We got to get into the algorithm on streaming services. I feel like really recognizing that building community through your music and through who you are is an element that can get lost along the way. Well, Whitby, Ontario-based punk rock band Chastity, they've recognized the importance of creating community through their music. And on January 13th, 2022, the band released their third full-length album, Suffer Summer, with many listeners singing its praises, myself included. And joining me today is the architect behind the project, Brandon Williams. Brandon and his band have toured Europe, parts of the United States with Pup, the band, had most recently been opening for the Dirty Nil, and they've opened for City and Colour as well as Alexis on Fire, which, it likely won't be the last time either. They've also signed with one of the most iconic independent Canadian labels in Dynalone Records. They've also signed with Death Wish Records to handle their international distribution. And upon the release of the album, Chastity were featured on the billboards in the heart of Toronto at Yonge Dundas Square. And as of the time of this recording, Brandon has been the face of the Ready to Rock Spotify playlist. Now, Brandon and I have a unique connection in that he and I share the same hometown of Whitby. We talk about how Chastity has been a vessel for creating a community and safe space for fans of his genre of music in a city ruled by sports arenas, and his plans for pitching the municipality on creating a more permanent venue to support an arts community that has been largely disregarded. Broadcasting from the traditional territory of the First Peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, Inuit, and Métis peoples, this is my conversation with Brandon Williams of Chastity.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for the great intro.
Man, it's such a thrill and a trip to be talking to you, man. Like I said, we're from the same place, Whitby, Ontario, and I love that you rep that so hard in everything that you do, a lot of the visuals and things like that. Like I said, you grew up around the corner from me, like to the point where my sister used to babysit you and your brothers.
Yeah, exactly.
How crazy
Street,
is this?
baby? Garden Street. Yeah. You're just on the other side of Garden Street there.
Seeing everything that you're doing with this project, again, visually, sonically, and you wrote a song called Manning Hill that's like not far from where we lived. There's shots of you, on the former finance minister's front lawn, which is like kitty corner to where I used to live. Like so much of what you're showing in your visuals, it's like, I feel like you're putting Whitby on the map, man. It's fantastic.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And it's what I know or whatever. It's like what we grew up around. And I think instead of like maybe hiding it or saying that I'm from Toronto, I was like, no, I'm from Whitby. I think that's fine. It doesn't have to be like embarrassing or something. And then I think in turn, though, that has like resonated with people on the outskirts everywhere. People that are like, actually, I'm not from New York. I'm from this place, outside of New York, or I'm not from. You get what I mean?
Absolutely, man. And I think that's what I love about it, is because it's built a community up around your music as well. Because into something I've never even realized, even being from Whitby, is that they didn't have much of an arts community like you mentioned here. So you guys have done that. You essentially, with those barn shows, you've gone ahead and created community around there. When did you realize that was something you needed to do? Was that after you'd released the music, or was this something you were noticing going out and listening to music?
Yeah, I think definitely like traveling, playing this music. It was like we were playing sort of outskirts, so-called like B markets or C markets even, And I think I saw like, wow, Whitby is Joliet, Illinois, or, you know what I mean? Some of these places we were playing, like I just saw Whitby in these places and thought like, why doesn't Whitby have a place? And I think I saw kids coming out in these places and they were extra excited, like why did you guys come here? And I think it's like, I think I just saw kids that were left behind a bit or whatever, or not considered in this culture, and infrastructure and planning. And it's like, if we can only plan, then we can probably get these kids a space too. So I feel lucky that we had the dungeon growing up. And truth be told, like I met with the owner of the building of the dungeon a few years ago and was like, what can we do here? Like, can we do anything? And then my friend Nick had this space, this barn, and he was like, look, man, like there's even like this mezzanine, because like there was like this top part of it. And we just had this vision, like we've got to do this. So we just emptied the space out. There's like a bunch of junk and whatever, some furniture in there. And we rented a U-Haul just for the day, brought all this furniture into this empty U-Haul and made it empty in the barn, had this show, and then put all the furniture back. And we did that a few times, like just kept doing it, and people kept showing up. And I think people were just like, wow, it can happen here and it should happen here. It's like sort of proof of concept has worked. And now I think after COVID's done, like I'm trying to knock on the mayor's door. As you know, I think real estate in Whitby, including commercial real estate, would be a bit of an uphill climb for a space, but we've played spaces in Europe that are sort of like state funded venues. And I think there should be more of that in Canada, and there should be examples of that in Canada, and then that should happen. Like just these all ages spaces, that aren't necessarily in Toronto.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point, man, because there's, obviously there's funding, there's government funding through Factor and Ontario Creates and things like that. Where is it to say that, maybe they open up some form of that kind of financing or, grant money to, create these kinds of spaces. Cause I mean, I know we're talking outside of Toronto here, but, obviously within Toronto, because of the pandemic, places are shutting down. And, this even includes like Rehearsal Factory, where people can go and just have a place to rehearse. These places for community to build. And you can see that in the videos that you guys have recorded at the barn. You know, when you see these shows, you see people hanging upside down and, you know, thrashing their head. This is that safe space for them to gather and really, you know, have that outlet and feel like they're heard and seen. Has that sort of been what you've noticed with when you have put these shows on?
For sure. Like, I met some of my best friends who are still my best friends today at shows, you know? So I think it's just like like-minded people. You grew up in Whitby, so I can say it, like the default culture, I think, is like an intense interest in hockey, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I wasn't that intensely interested in hockey actually. And so I took up skateboarding and I took up and I found punk, you know, and I found Alexis on Fire or whatever. And and then I had sort of my people or my crew, you know, and we could sort of recognize each other. And so I think the barn probably had that same effect. I hope, at least. Like, I saw a kid wearing a Mets shirt and I was like, holy smokes. Like, right. I would have never, and it gave me shivers seeing the kid wearing a Mets shirt, like walking down Roslyn Street. And I was like, whoa, I won. Like, where? This is
Mets the band, right? We're not talking about the New York Mets, right? Yeah, no, exactly.
No, like, Mets. So I was taken aback, and I think it's just like, they need a place to be like, oh man, what Mets, and talk with each other and meet and feel less alone. Ultimately, I think like all these spaces are closing, right? And none are opening back up. And it's like, we got to figure out now, we're at this crossroads. Like, do we value this in our society? Do we value this portion of people? You know, I think we should. And I think that the mental health conversation is so popular and so talked about. Like, a massive mental health conversation is loneliness, isn't it? So I think it's like, I think this is sort of a part of that solution, is like, how about the people that are interested in arts and media and music and all these things, you know? Yeah. How about for them? Do they have a spot? Because there are so many hockey arenas and there are so, like, the sports facilities in Whitby are looked after. Can we have one space for this? I hope so. Yeah.
I mean, what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the oil, you know, and we just need more squeaky wheels out there because, again, like you said, what you guys have been doing and putting on, I mean, it's a great case study to show that. And, you know, it's obviously been tough with the pandemic, but do you guys have plans to sort of get that back up and running and maybe this year, or looking to the future of sort of having that space sort of created? Because, you know, I know there's a lot of basement stuff happening as well. There's some great footage in your 666 interview of, you know, old basement shows and, like, you know, seeing guys that I used to go to high school with and some of that footage. I'm like, this is there they are. This is, you know, I remember being a couple of these basement shows as well. You know, is that sort of hopefully the plan as well for you to sort of, you know, again, like you said, you can talk to the mayor and things. So is that hopefully like a pretty, you know, near dream?
Oh, I hope so. So right before the pandemic, in like February or March 2020, we were in Europe and we played an amazing venue in Antwerp, Belgium called Trix. And it's a state-funded venue. We played that night and I just asked the staff, like, who is the manager here? Like, who oversees the space? And they were like, oh man, these guys are awesome. Like, you should talk to them. And we went to sleep that night and I got up the next day and went back and did an interview, like filmed with these guys, and just, they gave me a tour of the space and they told me just their process and everything. It was basically a vacant building in the city, and they pitched it to the city, you know, and they got funding and they pitched it to the country and it worked. And so I've got something edited together that I'd love to present to the mayor or to city council or whatever in Whitby. It's just a pretty friendly, cool video I mean, where I've got to like nail it with the city is like they want to hear how economically this could
Right.
benefit them, right? Like, is there tourism bucks in it for them? Will people come visit? So I've got to finesse and whatever and sort of put on
Right.
this pitching
Yeah.
hat. Anyways, yeah, I hope that it can be seen through into something more stable
Yeah.
and permanent than a barn in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, Ontario.
Well, for sure. Well, that's where it starts, right, man? That's where it all started. It's where you can look back to when, you know, this does come to fruition. You know, so you started out initially, you were sort of like an electronic sort of pop. It's kind of where you sort of got your feet wet a little bit, right? With the music as Hometown Beatdown. Is that where it all sort of formed for you and getting into the music industry?
Yeah, that project was kind of, I called a soft project sort of a hard name intentionally. It's always sort of been subversive. And I mean, I signed a major record deal when I was 19 years old, and it was completely kind of bizarre and bad and in the end. And I thought, well, I never want this to happen to me again. So I took whatever money was sort of left of that, sort of invested in myself, and studied at Berklee College of Music, like music and marketing management stuff. And I just thought, like, I started doing this DIY sort of from my bedroom. I want to kind of continue doing this DIY in a way that I can speak the language of the people that I felt a bit messed around with, and under terms that I was probably messed around with. And so I think that was like, I care about music. I care to continue to put out music. How can I do it in a fruitful way and in a way that's like true to myself? And so there came Chastity.
Man, it's cool. And I just love that evolution, man. I love that you started out in that one spot. Obviously, it sucks that the whole major thing, you know, you had a bad taste from that. It's awesome you didn't let it get you to the point of not pursuing music, because then we'd be, you know, left without this incredible album. And I mean, you know, Death Lust and Homemade Satan too, you know, are awesome in their own right. And you know, so did you ever, like, when you're thinking about putting Chastity together, did you see yourself here like texting Dallas Green in opening for City and Cutler? Like, was that ever something you were trying to attain, or was this more so, I'm going to form Chastity because, you know, of what I've felt, what I know that there, you know, other kids or, you know, people going through some of the things that I'm singing about? What really kind of formed I guess, you know, the punk emo core sound that you guys have put together?
I definitely did not picture that. And I think for me, I was like, if I can sing my neighborhood song, maybe this neighborhood someday will sing some of them back. And I remember having the goal of like, I want to write and record and put out a full length, and I want to like tour in England once. Like, I want to get to England and get to play England for some reason. I think I was watching like Stone Roses interviews and just old, you know, northern music. Yeah, northern England kind of music documentaries and stuff. And I was like, I'd love to play in England.
Well, it looks like they got a great community too, like of like heavy, you know, music listeners out there. Because I mean, you see, you know, like bands like Cleopatra and Ready the Prince also getting out there and just shutting down shows with so many, you know, of that type of crowd.
Totally. Like they definitely love music there so much. And when we've experienced some of that love now too, fortunately. And but from the beginning, it was just like, if I can do that, I'll feel fulfilled. And I feel fulfilled. Like, I think I'm just like, oh, wow. I think I'm just always taken aback. Like, any extra stuff that happens now, I'm so down and I'm open to stuff, but I'm like, I do feel fairly fulfilled, and it feels crazy.
Well, no, I love to hear that, man, because I mean, it's sometimes you think about that, right? Like, and no, you know, I think you're right to name drop with some of those things, because it shows progression, and it shows this, you know, this love for what you're doing, but it also makes me think too, like, you know, how, like, those moments, you know, it's recognizing those moments to take advantage of or to capitalize on. For instance, now you've written with Stephen Babcock of Pup, you've got Vicious Circle with Dallas Green, but able to collaborate with these artists, and even, you know, with your girlfriend Linnea, you know, who's got her project as Ellis, you know, it's sort of like you found also a community of musicians that are doing things obviously big and doing things right, and you know, you're noticing that because, you know, again, your work ethic on this album has been made apparent to Linnea as well, you know. So can you maybe like pinpoint a moment where you realized that like you were taking this to a level that, you know, you were making this kind of an impact that you would be recognized by a record label?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess when I signed with Captured Tracks, I was like, oh, whoa, like
Right.
this US label that I listened to and felt important at the time to youth culture, and that was 2017. Yeah, I guess I was just like, oh, whoa, okay, I'm gonna get to tour properly in the States probably now. And my record is going to be in stores.
Which I came across. Where was I? I was in Sunrise Records, and I flipped, and there it was, Death Lust. It hit me right in the face. I was like sick. And you know what? I feel so embarrassed saying this. I didn't buy it because I don't have a record player, but I left it. I was like, why didn't I just buy that record just to have it? I apologize, man. I'll go back. I'll go back and find it. But dude, amazing. When I saw the record in the store, I was like, what? Like this guy, I know this guy. I've known this guy, you know. It was man, that is it's so cool.
No, that's amazing.
Now you have Suffer Summer. This is your third full-length album. You've had some great EPs leading up to it as well. You can also hear the evolution. You've talked about this as well, from, you know, of the sound. You go kind of a bit heavier to start things off, you know, the first EP you had, and, you know, some heavier songs on Death Lust. You've gotten real melodic now in Suffer Summer, and I'm interested because, you know, I saw that you have also come up in Pitchfork. You've had albums reviewed in Pitchfork, and that's also when I know, like, this guy's done it. This guy's made it. This guy's got albums reviewed in Pitchfork. And so your first album, Death Lust, was given an 8, which is like obviously spectacular. Homemade Satan was 6.4. You know, and now, do you read into these? Did that have any bearing on how you moved forward in creating Suffer Summer, or is that just kind of like whatever?
I think I was taken aback by the second one. Not that I have some exemption to poor reviews or something, but truthfully, I think I took a risk in Homemade Satan. It was like an emo record, but it was like a political emo, like a very emotional record about politics, and it was sort of this concept record and about a person who's sort of lost and trying to find themselves in like this charged political way, and it wasn't necessarily like an easy record to write lyrically and everything. It was a challenge for me, and I took on the challenge, and I could have done less risky stuff, but that was the vision at the start of Homemade Satan, and I wanted to see this trilogy through. I wanted to write a record on fear, and I felt like I did sort of convey that fearful, kind of scary messaging in a poppy kind of emotional way. And so I was taken aback. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I guess I did probably have some Stockholm syndrome, you know, from Ian Cohen, the writer of that second one. I know he listens to a lot of music and a lot of emo music. We probably listen to a lot of similar stuff. I guess I was like, okay, like, let me write an even better record so that I can protect myself from this weird 6.4 feeling. Although I don't see it as that number myself, I think it's good record.
Oh, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm just interested if it had sort of that psychological effect on you to come back and make Suffer Summer as you did, because I mean, you come up and this album hits, man. Every single song on this record, and this is not me saying Homemade Satan is not every single song, but like when you put this album on, like I messaged you when I was listening to it. I think, yeah, and I wasn't alone when it first came out and listening to it 4 or 5 times that day. Because, from top to bottom, I mean, every song, man, you just have a great way too of structuring them, sequencing the songs. And I think you did a really great job with that in both your full length albums, all 3 of them, man. And so yeah, I disagree with the rating, but, I couldn't help but, wonder and want to ask if, yeah, you happen to take that into consideration and if that played a part in coming in, whether you thought specifically like, I'm going to go and I'm going to write this way better for them. But, I think no matter what, you've been writing what you want to write. And that's the impact I think that, these albums have is the truth in them.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you saying, yeah, I think I just felt motivated to it's sort of take some feedback or something. It's like, here's an opportunity for me to get feedback from somebody that probably represents a certain listenership of this outsider music in Ian Cohen. And I think welcomed different influence, on the album. I think I was interested in growing, and I guess it was always weird that you sort of grow in public. It's like, I put out this record and I do think I've grown from it. I think I've grown from Deathless too, and the EPs and any singles that I've put. I hope to just keep upping my game and challenging it until it's better, so that these people I work with are like, oh dude, have you heard this band? And a lot of the stuff is retrospect, right? It's like some bands that I'm listening to now, I wasn't born or something when they were dropping stuff, or I was 5 years old. So, yeah, but now we have the benefit of these platforms at our fingertips and can have this retrospect. So I think letting that influence in, I've discovered more music that I love.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, whether that review was sort of impetus to make what you made or not, the fact is you came out and you delivered too, right? I mean, you went, you made something fantastic. And again, you worked with Stephen Babcock of Pup. You wrote Real World and When You Go Home, I Withdraw, both just big songs. I love his writing. When you go back and when you read Pup lyrics, I almost enjoy reading them without the music, because the way that he writes and they write as a band, the songs are so poetic. And did you feel like and I guess I should first understand, how much of writing these songs with Stefan, was that, but did you also kind of lean on each other for lyrics and the way that the songs came together?
Well, lyrically, I'm pretty well, they come in fairly well pre-cooked,
Great.
I'm pretty obsessive with like just my notes app, and for this record I just had a lot of time to write lyrics and a lot of time to write everything. So a lot of the stuff was prepared coming in, but I agree. Like, I love, like, Pup's lyrics are chaotic, but it like Stefan just has this control over them. I feel still that they are always just anchored. I admire so much about Pup and what they've done and his writing. And I mean, we wrote those and we had 2 days with each other and wrote a bunch of stuff and started on some other stuff. And he's very thorough and deliberate and careful, about everything. And he takes the time. You can see it just equates to their success. It makes sense. He's such a good songwriter. And so having him in the room and having these ideas, more like arrangement ideas, and making sure tricks, like, and just lending these sort of trade secrets at times, to songwriting. I felt very fortunate to have been able to rip with him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and the same with, I guess, goes for Vicious Circle. That's a song you had written, and you had reached out to Dallas to say, hey, would you, be a part of this? And that was sort of how, his role in that song as well, right? Or did he have any part of writing any of the lyrics, or just part of the music?
Well, he came through. He was mostly just singing on this. I hope to write with him one day. I think I'm trying
Yeah.
to take this one. I'm trying not to be a punisher to anyone, right? I think I was looking around during the pandemic, and these people that I had dreamt of working with were all home, and I knew it, and they knew I knew it, probably. So nobody's on tour for once in my career. It's like,
Yeah.
I wonder if I can get together and just put it out there with some people and see. And if it's an enthusiastic response, then I'll do it. But if not, I don't want to punish these people.
Right.
But
Yeah.
but no, Dallas came and he was in the booth and was like, "Do you mind if I like Mary J. Blige on this part?" And I was like, "Dude, please do." And he just ripped it and made it his own. It's like I couldn't produce or direct him in any way that he wasn't better at than I. But that was an insane day, of course.
I bet.
But I hope to, if he's up for it. I mean, I don't want to punish the guy. I'm so careful to even talk with him or whatever.
Soon you won't be talking like that, Brandon. You're not punishing anybody. You've come out, you're coming out swinging. You're showing your seriousness. I feel like it's the big thing for a lot of these guys, right? Are you serious, right? Like, are we going to get into the studio and we're going to do something that you're going to put out and be proud of, and you've shown that. So I totally hear what you're saying, though. You don't want to punish these guys. These are artists you've been looking up to, the list that you've been listening to for years. The last thing you want to do is feel like you're irritating them, when you've got this opportunity to work with them, I guess, right?
For sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I'm even that way, I think, with my girl. Like, she's so talented. I've been intimidated by her craft and her sense of melody and her grasp on music and theory and stuff that I don't necessarily have, myself. And I think I'm intimidated just to use people's time in a respectful way and use these skills that they've accumulated. I don't want to just act like I'm entitled to those things without welcome. And but that being said, I respect that. Yeah, I'm so happy they were able to just give that time to this project, and it helped make Suffer Summer what it was. And it was just my job then to organize these sort of collaborations and to make sure it was cohesive, track to track, even though there were different writers involved and everything. I just wanted it to sound like one whole record, track 1 to 10. And I hope it worked and people feel like, oh yeah, this is Suffer Summer.
Well, you mentioned that this is a trilogy. You've got sort of a couple meanings behind the other guys. What's the intention behind the Suffer Summer title?
So I came up with that. Like, I tweeted that in 2016, Suffer Summer, and around that time, I can talk to you about these locations. Maybe people listening won't totally understand, but near Pringle Creek, again, nearby where we live, like Garden and Manning, I was skateboarding and I saw this like sad face on the sidewalk, graffitied into the sidewalk in blue spray paint. And I've got a picture, I got to post it, honestly. But I just thought it was like Suffer Summer-y. Like, I don't know how to, but it inspired the title, it inspired the feeling. Like, here I was skateboarding, I think probably looking for some feeling of happiness out there. And I saw this thing in the sidewalk, and I think it just like reminded me of myself or something. I saw myself in it, and it was a hot summer's day, the sky was blue. Why am I not happy? Yeah. And it just felt real. I don't know how to put it, but it felt real. Something felt visceral about this sad face looking up at me, and maybe me looking down at it with a similar facial expression, even though I am trying my darndest, So yeah, the theme of this record, I mean, with Death Lust, it was like death. On Homemade Satan, it was fear. And on this, it was happiness. And I've had these like cheat sheet books. They're like quarterly thick kind of magazines called LaFemme's Quarterly. It's just like from the great thinkers of the last thousand years and their thoughts. It's just like passages from them on each of these themes. And so I got
Yeah.
this, and there's one on death, there's one on fear, and there's one on happiness. So I got to cheat, I got to study or whatever and got to pull things from them. And that was my study on this. It's like, and I'll tell you, for hundreds of years, it's like it's been the struggle. It's like, why is this happiness? Why does it come and go? And it's not new. It's like, this has been the case for so many and for so many years.
And you stumbled onto them just like you kind of just like came across it, or like did it, like how did it present itself to you?
My friend, do you know Dan LeDuc?
Dude, he grew up on my street. He and I were buddies. Like, it's so funny you say that, because I saw him in your 666 interview. I'm like, is that Dan? I gotta ask him if he knows Dan.
Oh yeah, Dan's been involved in Chastity. Dan's a great dude, and Dan picked these up, and he was finding them. I think we were in the States. He found them, and I can't remember exactly. But anyways, our friend.
Has he
Dan,
been playing? Did he play drums for you?
He did, yeah. Talented guy,
and he and I would skate. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and he's a big brain dude, man. He's like a smart guy. So
yeah, he
would teach me. He would just say this epic stuff about anything. He just had it, at his fingertips, and I'd be just blown away by the things he'd say. And so I was like, okay, I need to get me some of that. Like, so he's been an influence on this project, big time, and these quarterly
that's
magazine.
Awesome.
So yeah,
it's great, man. I mean, again, it's also part of, like, I don't know if you've read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, but I mean, this book, it highlights sort of, some of the successes of people and how it seems like they kind of just were like overnight successes, or they just kind of came up out of nowhere. But like, some of this stuff just goes back, and like the opportunities that they were presented and took advantage of, and, and capitalized on. So that's why I just kind of get, when I see, again, somebody so close to where I'm from, and doing what you're doing, it's like, what could have what might have happened there to help draw that, draw this success. And what I see as success, I'm sure we all have our own definition. You've got your own definition, but based on what you've done to this point, man, I'm like, this is huge. This is huge for you. If, again, my opinion, huge for where we're from. Like, it's just so cool to see how you've sort of taken, again, something, even just stories from these magazines, and turned them into, parts of what you sing about, and so much that people can relate to. So you're signed to Dine Alone, one of the biggest indie Canadian record labels, and Death Wish, which is your international distributor. What do they got planned for you for 2022? What's happening for you for the rest of this year?
Honestly, I think we're just trying to read the room, like with touring and stuff. I think we don't want to do anything unsafe, and we also don't want to invest in something and then lose once we're in Europe. We have to fly back or something. I think we're hearing about that with some people we know, that's happening when they're far away from home, and it's just it's kind of shaky stuff. So, but I've got sort of more ideas for videos and stuff, and I want to do some live videos. I know they're kind of a bummer to watch because there's been so many of them over the pandemic, but I'm just working with them on trying to make a few of these ideas happen. There's like a billboard going up in Toronto that says "Suffer Some More?" ? And then there's like I was happy Dine Alone was down to do that.
Joel's an idea. Joel's an ideas guy. Eh? He anything that sounds good like that, I feel like he's on board with.
Totally. Yeah, totally. And Joel's of the DIY sort of background, and took Alexis on Fire and City and Color and all these bands, Monine, these bands I love, and like DIY heroes to like big DIY heroes, so, and kept that spirit still. But so we're just trying to keep busy, they want to keep it visible and whatever online, and just keep it going. Since August, we were starting to roll the stuff out, and now it's just like, how can we it's out now, but how can we keep rolling it out in 2022 without it just getting buried? I think there's tons of amazing releases that are about to happen this year. It's just like, how do we not get buried in this? Yeah, I'm psyched for more good music to just come out and whatever, and maybe we can play shows with some of these bands. So,
exactly. Well, I love what you said in a previous interview that, you know, you don't want to make people feel, you know, if you feel like you're in a place like you're having a show, you don't want people to feel like you have to be there. If you're feeling like you've got some sort of anxiety being around so many people, you know, in a place like that, like, you know, you are about, you know, again, whether it's safety or, you know, making sure that people feel comfortable at your show, you know, that's really what you guys are aiming for. And I mean, you just have to be at this point, right?
Exactly.
Well, again, dude, congratulations on the release of this album. It's, again, just fantastic, and, you know, great music videos to accompany it. Your 666 interview is also fantastic. I'll put a link to that, but listeners should go and check that out, and again, catch more visuals around Whitby and just sort of everything, the ethos that surrounds Chastity. So Brandon, thanks so much for joining me on the Release Day Series podcast.
Thank you, Alex. Great to see you, man.